Every time our athletes walk into this weight room, they're going to be pushed to the max.
Let's go! Let's go!
The barbell hasn't changed in over 100 years. I can take a 25-pound plate and we'll go out on the turf and I'll have you hating life. We talk about straining your gut, pushing past that comfort level. I want a lot of energy. What better breeding ground is there for being a success in life than the weight room?
Hey guys, welcome back to Iron Game Talk. I'm your host, Rob McKeefery, and this is episode number 243. I want to thank you guys for listening each week. Really appreciate those of you that like, share, and comment. This helps us to continue to highlight the great people in our profession doing fantastic things. Also want to thank our sponsors and specifically VersaPulley for bringing this episode to you for free. I only partner with companies that I believe in, and VersaPulley is definitely one of those companies. This week, I'm joined by Scott Salwasser. He's a director of speed and power development at Texas Tech. We're mutually connected with Chris DeSanto at Iron Grip, just a great guy there, and doing big things, man. So I appreciate you coming on the show, brother.
It's a pleasure, Ron. I've listened to a bunch of your episodes and a big fan of the show, so excited to get to talk shop with you.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, you've been, before Texas Tech, you've been UC Berkeley, you've been at Sparta Science, you've been Louisiana-Lafayette, Sacramento State, the Raiders. Rather than go through and kind of talk about the journey, which one of those experiences kind of best defines you? I mean, where did you really grow up as a coach?
Well, I would have to probably start at the beginning, at Sacramento State. I played at UC Davis, which is actually a rival of Sacramento State. They're FCS now, but they were Division II at the time. And that's actually honestly where I started strength coaching. I actually had a group when I was a senior. I had a group of my teammates. At that level,
yeah,
every coach has to wear so many different hats. And our strength coach was our running backs coach and our special teams coach. So he basically printed out a card and was like, he did the best he could, but here you go. And so I was always good at the preparation portion, and so I had basically a group that I would coach. All right, guys, this is what we're doing today. They'd lift with me, they'd run with me, I'd coach them up, and so really that was my first exposure to strength and conditioning. But as far as the profession, still to this day, the most fortunate thing that ever happened to me at Sacramento State was my very first boss, Gary Uribe. He's the head guy at San Jose State right now. But he had just come from being an assistant at USC. And at the time, USC was Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart, you name it. And I thank God every day that I learned it right from day one.
Yeah.
Because, who knows? You don't know anything. When you get into this profession, you especially playing at a smaller school like I did, you don't know what you don't know.
Right, sure.
And the reason I'm where I am today is because I learned it the right way from the beginning, and that's all I knew. That's all I knew was to coach kids hard. All I knew was to hold them accountable. All I knew was to bring energy every day and learn and develop as a coach. That's the only way I knew. And as I moved through the profession, I just continued to grow and apply those principles that I learned as a GA, really. And it took me a long way. So, without that, all the other, we could go over every stop and all the things I learned, but without learning it the right way,
right.
I wouldn't be where I am. And that's my biggest piece of advice to young coaches is find someone who does it right and learn from them. Because, you can read, I read tons of books. I listen to podcasts. I go to clinics, and I'm thirsty for knowledge, but nothing replaces getting under somebody and seeing it done right on a daily basis. Invaluable.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. I remember, I wrote, I didn't take my teammates through, my peers through, but I did work with the women's basketball team my second semester, my senior year, and writing programs. And I still have that manual that I put together, and it is the most god-awful thing. But
oh man,
getting that opportunity early like that is huge in the growth process.
Mm-hmm.
You started relatively young. You went right into it, and you've climbed the ladder since. You don't do that without making mistakes along the way. What was one of maybe the biggest mistakes you made, and how you learned from it?
Well, I think back to my very first opportunity in the profession. I was actually an intern with the Oakland Raiders.
Yeah.
Zero experience, fresh off of playing college football. The athletic trainer there, one of the assistant athletic trainers there at the time, was my high school strength coach. So we had kept in contact, and he's like, hey, man, I know you want to get into this. I can get you an internship. And so there I was, and I didn't know anything. I was competing at Olympic lifting at the time, so I knew how to teach snatch, clean, jerk, front squat, back squat, RDL.
Right.
But everything else, man, was over my head. But, I mean, I knew how to work. I knew how to clean benches. I knew how to make shakes. I knew how to show up on time and be excited about what I was doing. But the mistake I made was I didn't know what questions to ask.
Right.
I didn't know what was important. Is this important? Is that important? Are the percentages important? Are the sets and reps important? Are our coaching cues important? I just didn't know. And I look back, and now I think I might have like 2 or 3 pages of notebook paper from that experience. And I was there the entire offseason. And you know, in those days, an NFL offseason was a real offseason.
Yeah, right.
It's not like now where it's truncated. I mean, I want to say we started in early March. So it was March and all the way through the preseason, and a couple pages of notes. But I was just trying my best to bring it every day as best I could. And I didn't learn as much as I should have, you know, and that actually prompted me years later to go back and spend a couple months when Chris was there, because I had always regretted, man, I didn't take from it what I should have, just because I wasn't in a position to really learn. And then when I went back, obviously at that point I'd been a full-time coach for a long time, and it wasn't so much teach me how to coach as it was let me really take from this what the NFL is all about, so that one day when I'm back at this level, I get it. And I know what questions to ask and what information to take away.
Yeah, I could agree with you more. I mean, fortunately for me, I don't know why, and I wasn't this way in college, but you know, I took meticulous notes. I mean, taking pictures of every single document I was given, took pictures of every single thing. And I still go back to my internship experience with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and look through that intern manual, that intern journal, and I'll still pull things out of there. And it doesn't matter what it is. It's how it's presented. It's when you get in that head strength coach role, you know, where you're leading a team, you know, presentation and how, you know, and how you document, how you report, all those things. Those are things that you don't learn necessarily unless you take those types of notes. So I can identify with that in a big way. Well, man, you're the head, or you're the director of speed and power development, which is a little bit different, obviously, you know, in a lot of places. And obviously you're focused on the movement qualities and the power qualities of the sport. You've done a lot with force velocity profiling for jumping and sprinting. Let's dig into that a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about what you do and how do you do that in a team setting.
Yeah, so basically my first exposure to force velocity or movement signature profiling was at Sparta. And I know you've had Dr. Wagner on your show back in the day. I actually had the opportunity of working there kind of back in the grassroots phase.
Yeah, man.
And now they've got it all dialed in. And I mean, it's a well-oiled machine. But at the time, and I wouldn't trade it for anything, because at the time we were looking at raw data.
Yeah,
we were looking at raw data. We were looking at how athletes moved, and we had some incredible whiteboard sessions, just sitting down and talking about training, talking about the information we're getting, what it means, why this athlete moves this way versus that athlete, what injuries this athlete might be predisposed to as opposed to that athlete. I mean, just tremendous grassroots experience, you know, and I helped build some of the principles that they have and some of their training methods and means to this day. So that was kind of my first experience to the fact that not everyone's the same.
Right.
Which might sound kind of obvious, but to that point, it was like, everybody just do the same thing, right? Like just power clean, just run 110s and just bench and you'll be fine, right? Everybody. And I'm not saying that if you got 100 guys, obviously there's not 100 different programs, because at the end of the day, you're only going to be as good as what you can coach and implement and hold the kids accountable to. So by no way, shape, or form, I'm saying if I got 3 guys, maybe I'll do that. But with 100, no. But you can find trends and you can identify categories to put guys into where they may need this more than that. And the thing is that all you're looking at is concrete data that represents what we already program off of.
Right.
Every coach already programs off of the force time curve or the force velocity curve, right? We're working slow strength. We're working explosive strength. We're already working these things. It's not like we're coming up with new concepts or pulling things out of a black box. It's stuff that coaches already program off of. Right. The only difference is rather than guessing or educated guessing, if you've been around, you can look at a kid and you know if he's explosive or not. Rather than educated guesses, it's virtually the same thing that GPS does for practice data. It's like, okay, if you're a good coach, you know that they ran a lot at practice that day, right? I mean, but it just gives you a number. Okay, it gives you a number, and now you can take that number and have a plan in place to adjust it, either up or down, through training, through programming, et cetera. And so that's basically the nuts and bolts of the profiling. And to be honest here, I utilize it heavily with smaller groups such as pro day guys or combine training guys. Yep. That's a great group because it's a smaller group. It's all guys that have already reached a high level. Sure. And need that extra kind of special program to take them over the top. Majority of the guys that you have, especially, and obviously we're Power 5, but we still get a lot of developmental kids. A lot of kids will benefit from just getting under a barbell and getting stronger, just learning how to run, learning how to jump. So certainly there's a fundamental level of just development that doesn't require necessarily perfectly individualized programming, but I do believe that the higher level you get to, just adding 10 more pounds to somebody's squat isn't necessarily going to get it. And so this kind of gives you concrete information that you can manipulate as a means to an end in order to get them to move better, get them to perform better, et cetera.
So now, I mean, obviously Sparta is a force plate data. I mean, are there any other tools you're using besides force plates or?
Yeah, so when I was at Cal, we actually had a partnership with Sparta. So I actually had the Sparta force plate at Cal, which was really cool because during my time at Cal, we had Jared Goff, we had some cats. So I was able to see what your kind of prototype athletes look like in force velocity profiling. And that's something I can always go back to over the course of my career. Hey, you know, this is if you want to be a quarterback, this is how we should move, so forth and so on. Here, I don't have a force plate. So what I use is an app called My Sprint and My Jump, and JB Marin is actually been a huge resource for me. JB Marin, Carlos Balsalabre, Pierre Samazino. I'm sure I'm missing a number of guys, but that group of researchers has been a tremendous asset, utilizing these apps to get probably not the same level of information, but a lot of the same pieces of data to point or direct my programming. And once again, I'll use it on the pro day combine guys. I'll use it on a few of my very, very, upper echelon seniors or guys that by all accounts have maxed out their general qualities. They squat heavy, they deadlift heavy, they bench heavy, they jump high. All right, what can I do to take them to the next level? But those are two apps that that have been pretty valuable to me. Now I will say they're not idiot proof. Like, you've got to really collect the data exactly how they tell you to collect the data. Otherwise it's pretty much useless. So there is some skill there to that, but yeah, anyway, that takes the place of the force plate now.
So take us through just a sample profile. You'll bring the athletes in, you'll load up the app, and then what's happening now?
So you just film. it's on your iPhone. You film either a sprint for the My Sprint or a jump for the My Jump, and it spits out their force velocity profile. So for the My Sprint, I'll backtrack. For the My Jump, it will actually give you their optimal force velocity profile, because you can they're better mathematicians than I am, but through mathematics you can figure out exactly what combination of the two will yield the best jump.
Right.
You can actually, on the app, it will actually give you the optimal profile. Now with My Sprint, it doesn't do that. It gives you the same data, but you then have to process it and understand what it's telling you. And so what I do is I compare it to, JB sent me a bunch of data on rugby players, which is what most of the team would be comparable to.
Sure.
And then for most of my work here in the weight room is with our skill guys, wide receivers and DBs. So I have elite and sub-elite sprinter, track and field sprinter data. So I'll use that to compare them to as well. And then I compare them to each other. So that's a little bit more of an inexact science, because there is no make his profile look like this.
Yeah.
You have to compare them to the data you have, and then also fall back on my intuition from Sparta, having seen what we did to adjust force profiles there. To this day, I go back to that a lot of times and say, okay, this is what an intervention I might make to help improve this athlete.
And so then if the force profile is showing that they need more starting strength or max strength or whatever it may be, then you're just going to program accordingly in the list. Right.
So the My Jump ties more directly into the lifting or the weight program. The My Sprint, since it's a sprint, it's a 30-meter sprint, would affect your sprint programming. So yeah, more than likely, if a guy needs force in the sprint, getting stronger probably will help him. But you also want to look at more things with more transfer. So horizontally speaking, heavy sled pulls, things of that nature. And then if they need velocity, obviously flying 10s, flying 20s, more upright velocity based sprinting. So it's My Jump would be more directly weight room, and then the My Sprint would be more directly, I guess, field work or things with greater transfer to sprinting.
Well, obviously when you're talking field work and you're talking the sport of football, you're talking about agility and the ability to react. And one of the first people I heard speaking about reactive agility was Nick Winkelman and some of the research that was coming out of rugby league.
The GOAT.
Sean Mishka and others that have done it. You talk about force coupling, perception action coupling, or kind of reactive agility. What are some of the things that you're doing to assess that? What are some of the things you're doing to train for that?
Perfect. So I guess the biggest thing that kind of drove me to realize we needed to upgrade or change our agility program is, for years I was a master biomechanist. Put your foot here, set up these angles, and obviously that's still a large part of what we do.
Sure.
But then how come that kid that could run a 3.9 pro shuttle, why is he getting tackled in the backfield? Why can he not just do the same thing? Well, it's a completely different environment. It's almost too different. It's too different for him to take that movement and apply it. So we still teach and coach what would be called closed drills. Run to this cone, run to that cone, do it like this, because you got to be able to do it properly to start. But as soon as possible, I try to get them into an environment where they're making those same movements, but they're connecting them. And the reason it's called perception action coupling is they're coupling it or connecting it to the environment.
Right.
I'm now making this cut because you're running at me, and I need to make the cut to sidestep you or get away from you.
Right.
And it's a whole different animal, because now I have to negotiate time and space. I have to know how far you are away from me, how fast you're moving, where I need to get to. And it just enriches the whole environment and makes the athlete a lot more aware. So if you can take those clean biomechanics and get them to connect it to the environment and what they're perceiving and the information really that they're getting, that's when it really goes to the next level. Because how many times have we seen guys on the football field that just got it, right? They didn't test well, but man, they're moving around the field. We've always known it. You normally associate it with a linebacker that, man, he's a 5 flat guy, but God, he gets the ball, right? Well, why is that? Because he perceives things and makes decisions. I guess to summarize all the words that I've just spit out, you got to be able to make decisions.
Right.
And if you're not putting athletes in situations where they have to make decisions, they become poor decision makers.
Right.
And so that's really the big thing. So now how do you go about setting that up? Well, the environment that you want to create has to transfer to the environment they're going to be in on the field, right? And now that's the funny thing about football is everyone loves the phrase sports specific. It's kind of a catchword, but in football, it's really about being position specific, because you tell me, I mean, other than energy systems, how much does an interior lineman have in common with a cornerback?
Right.
You know? It's almost, it's not different sports, but in a lot of ways it's very different, you know? So I think that one thing that we really try to do is blend with the football coaches as best we can. I go to position meetings. I go to special teams meetings are great because you want to talk about awareness and moving your body in space. Special teams is phenomenal. But I try to go to as many meetings and talk with the position coaches and learn, okay, not only what movements do you want them to do, because I can watch what movements, why is he doing that movement?
Right.
Why did the running back, okay, take me through this. Okay, the running back ran at this shoulder, setting up the block, and then, jump cut to the outside and did that. Why is he doing that? And that takes immersing yourself in the sport. Now, it's tough when you're a young coach coming up. I have the luxury of just working with football. Right. If I had to work with football and 10 other sports, I wouldn't be doing this. Yeah. But you've got to get in the sport and really immerse yourselves. In this profession, it's like we love to put people in boxes. We're not a football coach. We shouldn't be coaching football. Well, we're not coaching football. We're understanding football. Right. We're understanding football. And we're understanding football because that's the end goal. What are we getting them ready to do? Right? It's all a means to an end.
Yeah.
And so in our runs, we run all 100 guys at once. And it always made sense to me, if you've got 5 NCAA allowed full-time coaches, you can be doing 5 different things. So the way it's set up, we have receivers and DBs together, running backs and linebackers together, O-line, D-line. So a number of different groups, but they're interacting with each other in these perception action activities, or quote unquote reactive agility drills.
Right.
The receiver's trying to get away, the DB's trying to keep him from getting away, and then you just change the environment. Sometimes you give them more space to work with. Sometimes you give them less space. Right. You work with angles. You might add another guy. I mean, the possibilities are endless, but all you're trying to do is recreate a moment from the football game. This is you on an island. He's got 10 yards between him and you're right in front of the goal line. What are we going to do here?
Right.
Just to create an example. You're just trying to create authentic situations.
Oh, I really like that. So when you're setting it up in your programming, I mean, your typical kind of conditioning for football would be kind of 2 linear days and 2 lateral days, right? Is that fitting in on one of those lateral days?
Yes. So what we do is we have 2 speed days, both a combination of linear and lateral. Okay. The way we break it up is day 1, for lack of a better term, because you want everything to be high quality, right? But I think you'll know what I'm getting at when I say day 1 is more high quality.
Yeah.
Longer rest periods, instead of more output oriented.
Yeah, sure.
That's the day where if I want to do any timing, like laser timing of a 30 or a 40 or a 20 or whatever I want to do, that's the day to do that. It's a day to be coached. We can instead of go. I mean, we're always going to work with tempo because that's how we play.
Right.
But that's the day to as I mentioned, get coached, get quality work in, etc. And then day 2 is the competition day, where it's also linear and lateral, but now everything is a competition. And so what I do there is for the change of direction work, in order to, because you have to be able to decide who won and who lost, right? If we're going to compete, we need to know who won and who lost. So I'll use things like Velcro breakaway belts, where you and I are connected.
Right.
And if I'm the offensive guy, I'm trying to break the belt. And if you're the defensive guy, you're trying to keep the belt from getting broken, either over a certain distance, through a course, for a certain period of time, so forth and so on. So that might be one thing we do. The other thing is, hanging right here next to my desk, we have flags, like from flag football.
Yep.
So that's another way to compete, right? I might put you at the 10. I'm on the goal line. We have from sideline to the numbers. And on the whistle, Coach McKeefery is going to try to get into the end zone, and Coach Sal is going to try to pull his flag. And we're going to see who wins. And that's an example of creating a situation or reactive agility that might pertain to football, but we can grade who won and who lost. As far as the linear stuff, on the first day, as I mentioned, it's longer rest periods, it's laser timing, we're trying, it almost looks more like sometimes a track and field workout. On the competition day, we race.
Yeah.
And so there's 2 ways that I've seen, 3 ways really, to get an athlete to run as hard as they can. Number 1, you time them.
Yep.
Number 2, you have them race each other. And number 3, you line up a bunch of guys with NFL polos along the field, and they're going to run, right? But we go the 2 ways. We time them on one day, and then the other day they race, and they're going to compete, and someone's going to win. And they're grouped at that point. Day 1 is grouped by position. So everything they do on day 1 is going to be position specific. Day 2 is going to be more football specific, maybe position generic, so to speak. And then their speed work is going to be by grouping, like a track meet. Heat 1 might be all the 10 fastest guys.
Right.
Heat 2, the next 10 fastest guys, all the way down to the slow guys. But guess what? If you're in heat 9, you're still competing, because you don't want to be – you want to be the fastest dude in the slowest group. I mean, you don't want to be the slowest dude. So everybody's competing against guys that are their same capability, and so they'll get points. There's winners and losers, and so we're really working the same things on both days, just in a variety of different ways. So the 2 speed days, and that's what they'll look like.
Are you doing anything in terms of an evaluation process of this? I mean, doing like a Y test, like a reactive Y test, or anything along those lines?
No, we really don't. I know some people like the flashing lights and things like that, but to me, that's not that's not what you respond to on the football field, right? You respond to a human being. Right. So I think that might tell you time-wise how quickly I'm capable of reacting. Right. But I still may not be good at reacting on a football field, because a football field is in addition to reacting quickly, reacting optimally.
Yeah.
What am I reacting to? I can react quickly, but what if I run the wrong way? I can react quickly, but what if I misunderstand what you're doing, right? So it's, in addition to reacting quickly, it's also reading the subtle nuances of the opponent, right? If I'm coming to tackle you, in addition to getting to you quickly, I got to be able to perceive what you're doing in space in order to tackle you. So and then testing wise, for the linear speed, we'll test absolute speed. We'll test acceleration just like anyone else. Reaction-wise, the one thing we will do linear speed-wise is I'll have a laser with a football, and I'll have a laser for the finish, and the football will break the initial laser, and the athlete will break the second laser. Gotcha. Because the thing is you could react to something, but if I'm just timing you, I'm still just timing you, right? It's no different. I might as well just go off of you.
Right.
But if the stimulus initiates the first laser and the athlete finishes, then it's not perfect, but
sure.
We're trying to innovate here. So I'm trying to think of ways, to, and in that case, our special teams coach wanted something like that. He's like, can you think of a way to test these guys' speed in response to reacting to something? I was like, well, yeah, I can think of a way. And so there you go, and we'll see how it works. But to answer your question, the ultimate assessment will be what they look like on the field.
Yeah, I agree.
Are we missing tackles? If we're missing tackles in space, then my, innovative program didn't work, right? That's at the end of the day, it's about performance. And I think wins and losses, we don't really control. Like, those will take care of themselves, but I can certainly make you a better football player. I'm not only going to make you a better tester, but it's my job to make you a better football player. And I think that this perception deal is really bridging the gap in my mind.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And again, if you go look at the research, the number one predictor of success at elite level soccer or rugby is reactive agility. And it only begs the question it only makes the assumption that that's the same thing in football, in professional football or wherever. Well, man, this has been great. We end the show with a couple of resources here. What's the best piece of coaching advice you ever received?
The best piece of coaching advice. I think it's and I don't know who told me this, but multiple people. It's the thing that will make you successful as a coach is getting buy-in from the athletes, and that starts with getting them to trust you. If they don't trust you, especially now, when we played, a lot of times if the coach said so, you did it because he was the coach. Those days are done. Yeah. Those days are just done. That's just not how it is anymore. And I'm not, and now listen, we're hard on the kids. I'm by no means saying coddle them or suck up to them, but you've got to get them to trust you. Now, whether that be because you show them, obviously that you care, but also that you know what you're talking about, that you can help them achieve their goals. If you can get them to trust you, you're going to be able to push them a lot harder. If they don't trust you, you're done, man. No matter how smart you are, no matter how good of a coach you think you are, you're done. So, getting the athletes to trust you and getting buy-in is the most important thing in producing a successful program.
Yeah, I agree. You gave us 2 apps already with My Sprint and My Jump, but give us a book and a website recommendation.
Right. So, book-wise, strength and conditioning-wise, there's a million good ones. But one thing that I always tell our interns or any younger coaches, if you haven't read, and I'm looking at it right now above my desk, Science and Practice of Strength Training, Zatsiorsky and Kramer, that's where you got to start, in my opinion. And I've read Super Training cover to cover, and I've read the Bible also cover to cover, and I've done both once, and I'll probably never do either one again.
Right.
But I tell people Science and Practice is like Super Training light. It's all the same ideas, but something that you can move through quicker and condense. And so that's the best one. And then, outside of strength and conditioning, I like autobiographies of any great leader, great historical person. I love General Patton. Anybody like that has motivated people or gotten people to succeed beyond maybe their perceived abilities. I'll love to read an autobiography or a biography about that person.
Yeah, that's great. Any websites?
So, I've actually done a lot of work for Just Fly Sports, Joel Smith, website. I've written a number of articles on there, done a number of interviews, podcasts, etc. for Just Fly Sports, and I think he does a great job of consolidating a lot of the, as you do as well, the great minds in our profession and getting them to kind of speak their piece. So I would say check that out, if only because I'm on there quite a bit. So
sure. Well, man, like I said, I really enjoy having people on the show that think outside the box, and aren't afraid to try, fail, try again. And use science, the scientific process. I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's what we are, right? We're scientists we have a pretty cool laboratory that we get to go out and do these things in. We need to be pushing the field forward. And so anybody that's doing that on a regular basis has my respect and appreciate what you're doing and you coming on the show and sharing it.
Appreciate it. I do have one more thought or piece of advice for your listeners, especially the young coaches. Build relationships with the sport coaches, the football coaches, especially if you're a football guy and want to be a head football strength coach one day, the football assistant coaches, because early in my career, I spent too much time getting to know other strength coaches. Yeah. And that's great if you want to be an assistant strength coach. Yeah. Because that's who's going to hire you. But if you want to be a head strength coach, you better know some football coaches. And that's one thing that I've only gotten good at lately, which is, in my opinion, too late in my career. So that's one thing. If I had to go back and do it all over again, wherever I was, FCS, mid-major, whatever, hey, man, get around the football coaches, and all that. So.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. That's a great point. Those aren't the ones that are hiring you once you get to the head strength coach level. But, man, thanks so much. Appreciate you coming on.
No problem, Ron. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
That's it for this episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk. Thanks to this week's guest as well as our sponsors for bringing this episode to you for free. Make sure to check out ronmckeefery.com where you can join our mailing list, find the show notes, including all the links and resources mentioned, and information about Coach McKeefery's other products. While you are there, please join Coach McKeefery in the comments section thanking our guest for sharing. If you haven't subscribed to Iron Game Chalk Talk on YouTube or iTunes yet, make sure to do so. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome. Coach McKeefery can be found on Twitter at @RMcKeefery, on Facebook and YouTube at /Ron.McKeefery. That's it for this week. Be sure to check back next week for another great episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk.